Hey everyone, I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to Cube Reviews episode 26. This is your host, Ian Braverman. Today I am joined by Max Mayer, also known as FiniteMTG. How are you doing today?
I'm doing super well. Thank you so much, by the way, Ian, for the introduction and for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to have you on. We've definitely met at a few events before, like Cubapalooza. It was great playing Cube with you there, and Cube for a Cause, hanging out with you there. And also, you have your own YouTube channel, Finite MTG. Everyone go check that out. The Cube and Chaos podcast. We were just talking about that before we started recording. I hope that we get more episodes of that one day soon. So introduce yourself.
Thanks. Well, yeah, I hope the same, by the way, about the podcast. And yeah, I definitely have spent a lot of time making Magic content, whether it's on YouTube, Twitch, podcast. I really just love the game. So it's really come naturally and easily to me to devote a lot of time to it. Specifically, I like Magic formats that everyone else doesn't always necessarily like. Cube, I would say, is kind of the outlier because I feel like that is pretty popular, but I spend a lot of time thinking about chaos drafts, and flashback drafts. Just these really fun ways of playing Magic that, don't always get celebrated that often.
I totally agree. And that's a great segue into what we're going to be talking about today. Today, we're talking about comparing Cube Draft and Cube Design to playing Chaos Draft, which is something I'm really excited to talk about. I know you've done a ton of Chaos Draft, but I've also done a good amount of Chaos Draft in my day. I say it every week. We play at Games IRL. If you happen to be in the area of Avon, Connecticut, come join us. Definitely always looking for more Cube people, but at that game store every Sunday, we do Chaos Draft. It's a really fun event. And but first, before we get into that, tell us about your history with Magic and Cube Design and Chaos Draft.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So I think I've been playing for, I want to say 8 years at this point. So feels like not that long, but I guess it's gone by kind of quickly. And yeah, in general, I really like to win. That's driven like a lot of the way that I've engaged with Magic. Even though I haven't been trying to play at like the pro level or anything like that, I try to play accurately whenever I can, and I take that part of the game fairly seriously. And I think that really has carried over into the way I design cubes as well. Like I want things to feel viable for like my players when, they're drafting an environment of mine. Like I want it to feel like there's not just like some random variance that just gets injected into the game and makes something crazy and random happen. Like I want it to feel intentional. I want people to feel like games are close. And yeah, because I want that when I'm playing as well.
That's a very funny dichotomy between wanting to have your cube games feel intentional compared to Chaos Draft.
Yeah, absolutely. I very much agree with that. And it's funny too, because I think a lot of people think of chaos and cube as just inherently like so diametrically opposed. But that's why I'm really excited about this premise, right? Because I think you're kind of implying that actually they do have a lot in common, or there's at least some crossovers that are really important to speak to. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And what are some of your hobbies outside of Magic and what do you do for work?
Sure. Yeah. I am a clinical psychologist, technically still in school right now, working on my PsyD. So, most of the way there to my doctorate, really excited about that. Hopefully, my master's degree as well. That's part of the process, happens along the way. And unfortunately, that doesn't leave me with time for too many other hobbies these days. Even Magic sometimes feels like it's pushing it. Some of the things I really like to do, I really like to write. I love Ultimate Frisbee, though that's been a minute for me too. And I actually like singing as well. And I feel like I've heard you sing, at the two events that we've gone to together. If I remember correctly, I think you might also be a singer.
Yes, that's awesome. It's funny, I've said it on a few episodes, but I feel like there's a lot of, for some reason, crossover between musicians and cube players and Magic players.
Yeah,
That's
I can
awesome.
see that.
What do you like to sing?
Nothing too serious. When I was younger, I was in a musical here and there, but now it's pretty much just whatever pops up on Spotify that I'm enjoying. The stuff that suits my voice best is basically anything like in the baritone range. So most pop is a little high for me pitch wise, but that's all right.
Baritones are underappreciated. Totally. What's your favorite musical then?
Favorite musical? That's a tough one. It's kind of a cop out. I think I'm gonna have to go with Mary Poppins just because it was the first one I was in.
Oh, what were you in Mary Poppins?
At that point, I was just ensemble, but yeah, I did really enjoy the show. There were like, I want to say 50 or more of us. It was kind of a big high school that I was in, so big production. It was fun. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love musicals. When I was in high school, did a lot of musicals too, and they were so fun. My favorite role that I had was probably when I was Muddle the Tailor in Fiddler on the Roof. That was a
Oh,
really fun show.
awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Fiddler is a great show. That's really cool.
Yeah. Let's jump right into the topic. So, as we mentioned, Cube and Chaos Draft, while they definitely have their differences, I think that at least a lot of lessons from Chaos Draft or ways that you approach Chaos Draft can be translated over to Cube. And first off, tell me why you love Chaos Draft so much.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's almost hard to put into words because I feel like there are so many reasons that come to mind when I think about it. But one of the first things I would say is just the replayability, which maybe to some people doesn't matter as much. But like, I'm someone, for instance, who's like never really played Constructed because the idea of like sticking with the same deck, why would I do this? Like, I don't know. It would have to be like a really special deck for me to want to play it over and over. And so, one of the things that I really, really love about chaos is like it doesn't matter what you do, every single time you're going to end up somewhere almost completely different from where you've been before. So yeah, there's just unlimited territory to explore, I think.
I totally agree. After I do a draft of a limited format once or twice, and it feels like the format has gotten solved at that point, or, oh, the best deck is red white aggro or blue black control or something in a limited format, I don't want to play it too much anymore because I feel like other people who play it all the time have an advantage, or maybe I don't have the knowledge for it compared to Chaos Draft. It's kind of just a skill you can develop over time and really improve at. And it's going to be different every time. You're definitely not going to get bored. And I totally agree with what you said. I used to play a lot of Commander, and I don't know how I played the same Commander decks every week, all over and over and over again, or the same modern decks. Or I like the difference that you get every time that you play limited, especially Chaos Draft.
Yeah, there's so much variety in there. And one of the things too that I feel like you referenced in there, which is like another huge reason that I love chaos so much, is specifically like stuff about colors and color preferences. Like, yeah, I mean, you can still develop color preferences, but again, it's not like it's solved, right? And in fact, maybe it's kind of unsolvable because of how replayable it is. Like, you're not going to be going on 17 lands and being like, oh, what do I what do I first pick in this chaos draft? Like that's impossible, right? There are too many cards. There's not that kind of data out there. So it really gives you so much more freedom when there isn't this prescribed idea of like what you should be doing.
Absolutely. And you've also designed many cubes. Looking at your cube cover, there's a lot of cubes on there. Like I played your one mana value cube on MTGO and I had a lot of fun with it. It was a really unique experience. Actually, not my first one mana value cube that I played, but it was very fun. I had a ton of fun. And also, when we were both at Cube for a Cause, you had your sci-fi cube, which was featured there. Tell me about how playing Chaos Draft has affected your cube design.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that one of the things that I've really appreciated about chaos as how like it enriches my cube design ability and experience is just you learn so much. Like when you play with all of Magic's card pool, there are so many lessons to learn. There are so many cards that look like they do nothing and they're actually very powerful. There are so many cards that, look like they're really exciting and actually they're unplayable. Just being able to have all this data and like all this experience like grounded in admittedly like a format that's really different, right? Like chaos is never going to feel like the sci-fi cube where everything practically either is or makes an artifact or has something to do with an artifact. Or in the one mana cube, like you're never going to have a chaos draft deck that's like all one mana spells. That's not going to happen. And yet playing chaos has taught me like, these one drops that look absolutely wretched are actually not like that. So one example of a card that you would never necessarily encounter if you're a constructed player or if you're someone who's been playing lots of high-powered cube is Forge Devil, right? One red mana for a 1/1, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals a damage to target creature and a damage to you. Like if you look at this card and you're so acquainted with high power levels, you're just going to think, wow, this is a piece of garbage. Like this is unplayable. Why would anyone ever want this? And yet, if you're in the 1 mana cube, it's like, wait a minute, this is a card that is kind of like the Flame Tongue Kabu of this format, right? Like, this is a card where it enters the battlefield, it kills another creature. And it's thanks to Chaos Draft, I would say, in large part, that I'm aware of cards like that. And, sure, you can look on Scryfall and stuff, but the times where I have a lot of X1s in my deck and my opponent boards in Forge Devil and destroys me in Chaos, it's like, this is going in my cube. So, yeah, it's stuff like that that I feel like it's really nice to have those lessons to take with me.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I find that there's a few places that you can find cards to include in your cube. I feel like most people, it's looking at top constructed decks or looking at the staples from commander formats and saying, especially for a vintage cube, oh, these are the cards that are performing the best in constructed. Like, oh, Flage is really good in modern right now, or Ragavan is blowing up legacy right now, or something like that. And so I feel like that's one perspective that a lot of people find cards for the cubes. Another one will be the cards that are really good in their limited formats. For example, a uncommon that is extremely powerful and dominates a specific limited format, like let's say, for example, Soul Herder in Modern Horizons 1 draft. That's a card that didn't really see much constructed play or anything, but was very powerful in Modern Horizons 1 draft and is one of my favorite cards ever. But if there is a limited format that maybe wasn't very balanced, for example, let's say aggro was the best thing by far to be doing in all will be one draft, then the cards that weren't good in that format, like slower control cards, but might still be really powerful cards, don't get their chance to be explored or even considered by cube drafters. So Chaos Draft gives you a really interesting perspective because you get to take cards from a limited format out of their original limited format and really, like you said, get to see them in different contexts and experience these cards. And you get to maybe find some really great sleeper picks that nobody else has noticed.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. And I think that those are great examples for sure of where people can find cards to put in their cubes. Also, I think another big one is just other cubes. Like, I think people do that a lot. And I think it's really great to have these sources of inspiration. I think it would be really hard to build cubes if everything was like, well, I guess I'm just going to build this from scratch with no ideas of where to start. Going back to your point about like these overlooked cards, especially in like, let's say, slow cards that appear in fast limited formats, things like that. Another really nice kind of recontextualization of those cards is just actually playing them in Chaos Draft. Like, if you ever open a pack of original Ixalan and you're like, wow, I can actually play the 6-drop without getting run over. Like, it's a funny feeling, but it's almost like using the whole Buffalo or something. Like, you get to play with these cards that normally you don't.
Definitely. And tell me about some Chaos Draft decks that you've had that maybe had you realize some cards that nobody else had really seen before, or you hadn't really thought about even playing in a queue before. And then you said, wow, this card is great.
Sure, yeah. So I guess the first one that comes to mind when I think of something like that is I was playing this match against Numat the Nami, pretty well-known content creator who mostly makes limited stuff. And he had an absolutely insane deck. He had like Tibalt slash Valky, so like the 7 mana Rakdos Planeswalker. He had Fight with Fire, which is, 3 mana deal 5 to a creature, I think, and then 9 mana like deal 10 to any number of targets divided as you choose. And then he had something to get Fight with Fire back from his graveyard. And so he just had like this absolutely absurd deck that it seemed like I could never beat, except I picked up Sleep, which is 2 blue and 2 generic mana to tap all creatures target player controls and they don't untap during player's next untap step. And then Gridlock, which is like X and blue, an instant, says like tap any number of target non-land permanents. It looks like this absolutely wretched card. I think I got it like 13th or something during the draft. But I was looking at it and thinking about it and feeling like, well, my deck is really tempo oriented. I don't have very many powerful cards. Sleep is doing something similar. So I guess this is kind of worse, but maybe I'll give it a try. And it was like an absolute miracle. I top decked incredibly well, but I actually defeated Numat with like 2 copies of Fight with Fire and actually threw 2 planeswalkers as well. So,
Wow. And did
yeah.
you end up putting Sleep in any cube? Was that like an inspiration for you?
That one maybe not so much. I guess it was more of like a lesson in general about like tempo. I feel like that is one of like the common themes for me about like takeaways where even if it's not like necessarily the specific card, though actually sleep did show up in my peasant cube. I forgot about that. And it was a very powerful card there. So thanks for reminding me. But I think in general, like the kind of takeaways that I've had have been just about like how magic works. So again, lessons about tempo in that sense. Maybe it's lessons about fixing or removal or curve, just these parts of the game that, you know, everyone is probably at least peripherally aware of. But like as a designer, I feel like that stuff really matters because, you know, you want to make sure that your players are experiencing that when they play their matches. So yeah.
Definitely. And I feel like we should have said it earlier. So for people who don't know what Chaos Draft is, in normal limited booster draft, you get, let's say, 3 packs of the newest set Aether Drift, and you play draft with those. But with Chaos Draft, instead, you get 3 random packs that could be any set across Magic's history. So just to make that clear, I feel like we should have said that before. I totally agree with that point that you just made that when you play Chaos Draft, it boils Magic down and draft to its bare bones and essentials. Because when you're playing a normal limited format, let's say Aether Drift, you can go into a max speed deck. You can focus on the exhaust mechanic and you can really build around those synergies. But in Chaos Draft, you get a bunch of random sporadic things from every different format. You might have some random Angel Lord. You might have a few max speed cards. You might have some random devotion cards. And it really gives you a perspective on a creature's base stats. Like, oh, this is a 3 mana 3/3. It's going to be efficient enough that it's going to kill my opponent. Or, hey, this is a removal spell. It might be inefficient, but it's removal. And I think it just gives a cube designer, when they play a lot of Chaos Draft, different perspectives that they might not get when they're just playing normal limited.
Yeah, 100%. I super wholeheartedly agree. And funnily enough, like 3 mana 3/3 is like one of my favorite stat lines. So funny that you mentioned that one. But I was gonna say too, like I think chaos is 100% like does emphasize the fundamentals, like you're saying. And at the same time, I feel like I also hear this myth that people will say of like, oh, there's no synergy in chaos draft. And that is like so kind of disheartening to me just because I feel like there's synergy everywhere in Magic, right? It's just about finding it. And so I guess also going back to your question about like, you know, some of my most memorable decks, one of them was I started pack one, pick one, Abyssal Persecutor, which is 2 and double black for a 6/6 flying trample demon that says, you can't win, your opponents can't lose. So the only way that you can win after, you know, the Persecutor's there is to somehow get rid of that ability, whether that means getting rid of the card, making it somehow lose the ability, whatever. And so I was thinking like, there's just like a premium removal spell in the pack, right? Like I could have just taken the card that was going to be good, but instead I was like, let's see what happens. I'll take this fun, kind of goofy card and see if we can build around it. And speaking of rate again, too, like obviously 4 mana for a 6/6 flying trample, like that is a lot of rate. So the payoff is definitely there. And I ended up with this really sweet Orzhov deck that ended up playing these sack outlets that I never would have put into a deck before. There's this card called Thirsting Axe from Eldritch Moon. It's 3 mana for an equipment. It says equipped creature gets +4/+0. And at the beginning of your end step, if the equipped creature didn't deal combat damage to a creature this turn, sack it, and it equips for 2. And it's this card that's like, again, absolutely terrible. Like you just wouldn't play this anywhere. But the recontextualization, like the idea of like, I have Persecutor in my deck. I can use this to deal 10 damage to my opponent or something, but also I can use this to get rid of my Persecutor. It's like, it really, you know, encourages you to rethink your understanding of these cards.
I totally agree. Sometimes just a terrible equipment that makes you sack your creature at the end of the turn. Most people would see that card and say, this card is horrible. Why would you ever play this card? Like, what is the point of this? But because you had this experience of putting this in Chaos Draft, it gave you this whole recontextualization and learning moment to say, you know, maybe a card like this does actually have an opportunity to be useful, especially in a lower power queue, but in very unusual situations and create really memorable moments.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I totally agree also with what you were saying about emergent synergies. I feel like so many cube designers are trying to recontextualize and change their thought process of instead of saying, I'm going to build a cube with blue green is going to be lands, red white is going to be aggro, green black is going to be graveyard. I feel like a lot more cube designers are going in the direction of saying, I want to have more smaller packages or allow the drafters to find the synergies among the cards that I put into it and not have it feel so much on rails. And I really feel like Chaos Draft has a lot of that feeling. For example, while there might not be the synergies that were meant to be, like we said, an Aether Drift or Max Speed or something, Magic has a lot of synergies that span across its history, like 1/1 counters, aristocrats and sacrifice, control, red white aggro. So even these sets that really weren't meant to be played together in limited, you can definitely find a lot of emergent synergies, which is really fun, just like in Cube.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like one of the common themes there about like you're describing is those synergies become more apparent almost like in gameplay rather than drafting. Like even just thinking about a control deck, for instance, right? Like if you have counter spells, like finding other ways to play at instant speed, like that is a synergy, right? Like it makes your cards work together. And also what you're saying about emergent synergies in cube design, I feel like that is such an important part of the design sort of revolution developments that have been happening recently because yeah, it does get a little bit stale or a little bit two dimensional or something. Like if you're just going into this environment and it's like, yeah, every like two color pair does like one thing and nothing meshes with anything else. Like people want to explore. And again, I feel like that's one of the things that Chaos does and Cube does too. I feel like those are actually like two of the most kind of exploratory formats. Like one of them is any card from Magic's card pool. You never know if you're going to open it. And the other one is like, you can put any card from Magic's card pool like in your own environment. So yeah.
Totally agree. And I feel like you could definitely build a cube to feel like Chaos Draft. And that's something that you actually did that I wanted to talk to you about. Like one of the cubes on your Cube Cobra page, I saw that you made a 2,448 card cube called the Chaos Cube. I'm just like so curious how you went about designing this cube. Did you actually have cards in mind you were putting in, or was it more you just went through your bulk and were pulling stuff out, or how did you design this cube?
I feel like I don't know whether it's implied in the question or not, but I can't help but hear this undertone of like, what kind of insanity happens to a person to think that this is how you should build a cube? Um, I was just in this place where I was discovering just how much I loved chaos, discovering, unfortunately, that, it's not like Chaos Draft is unheard of or something, but the fact that, like, even just going into this episode, right? Like, we've defined Chaos Draft. We didn't define Cube Draft because people know what that is, right? Like, that is this popular, like, common thing. And so, Chaos, like, it was really hard for me and challenging to notice that, like, oh, yeah, there are real barriers to this. This is not super popular. And one of the reasons for that is that it's expensive, right? Like, especially with old packs, like, it's tough to set up something in paper too, where you're like chaos drafting regularly and like not going broke. And if you're really using Magic's whole card pool, like, good luck paying for your like Urza Saga pack or whatever, right? So, one of the things that I tried to set up as a workaround was like these chaos environments that I curated to really just try to emulate the format. And I consider these experiments successful. And at the same time, they're all pretty much in the past for me at this point because I just figured out a way to run Chaos Draft on Magic Online with any card that can be drafted on Magic Online. So no more 2,500 like card cubes when you can just forego that entirely.
How did you pick cards to go into this, though? I'm just so curious.
Yeah, so it's also funny because there are so many projects like that. And I think I'm just a little bit like that too as a cube designer, where it's much easier for me to start things than finish them. But thinking specifically of these cubes that were designed to emulate chaos, a lot of it was just poring over Scryfall, looking at old sets, like trying to find cards I liked, cards with stat lines that I liked, commons, uncommons with play patterns that seemed like they would be healthy or fun. So really just a lot of time and dedication and not really cards that I just own in paper or anything. I don't play enough paper to have that kind of thing available.
I think that's so funny to be designing a cube that's meant to feel like Chaos Draft and just completely chaotic. I think that's such a funny goal to have for sure. And I find that there's a lot of similarity in my mind when it comes to going into a new cube for the first time and drafting a chaos draft. I think that there can be a lot of lessons that you can gain from chaos draft and going into a new cube, especially a lower power cube. Like we mentioned, chaos draft is all about boiling down magic to its most simple mechanics. And because it's all random packs, the synergies, the themes are all mashed together to not really shine. It's all about finding unusual, unique synergies, and also boiling cards down to, like we mentioned, their base stats and just finding power outliers and removal. It becomes really important to be able to do that. And I feel like in a lower power cube, especially, like if you're playing a popper cube or a thematic cube, I often do a lot of the same strategies. For example, trying to find as many two for ones as possible, finding some sort of engine that can accrue card advantage. Tell me about how you go about doing a lower power cube or approaching a cube compared to chaos.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think those are great examples because I feel like card advantage and engines are such an important part of Magic, especially like lower powered Magic. I love popper cubes, but one of the things that I tend to be critical of, and I think other people do too, of popper cubes is that they can feel like they're all two for ones. And so it's like everything is, this like grindy, like resource exchange that never ends. And, the game ends when someone runs out of cards or that kind of thing. So one of the nice things about chaos, I would say too, is like two for ones are scarcer, right? Like they're more valuable. And I think that is maybe like a healthier way of valuing them. And that of course puts popper cubes in a tough place because, you want to run the best cards and the best cards are frequently like these sources of card advantage. But yeah, so I do think going back to your question that is a way that I approach those formats as well. I definitely try to identify power outliers. I also focus a lot on like my color preferences and just like what kind of strategy I think tends to work well. These days in Chaos, I've really moved toward blue as a color that if I can play it, I will, which didn't used to be the case for me. And thinking specifically about like high powered cube, like I used to just play so many proactive aggro mid range decks like Boros, Gruul, like Orzhov, like Rakdos, just all these creature decks that just want to attack and kill the opponent. And it's fun to be doing something different in lower power levels where, yeah, I'm trying to grind things out and get my value.
Definitely. And what kind of strategies do you often go for in Chaos Draft? Like, I definitely have my preferences. I often just go for the idea of I'm going to take as many bombs as possible in as many colors as I can and just figure out the fixing along the way. And I think that that definitely has bled into what I do in a lot of cubes. I love some five color soup, as might be the dismay of many cube designers. I know a lot of cube designers say, I don't want players to be going for five colors. I want them to follow the synergies that I put in or not just take all the best cards. But in Chaos Draft, I think that that's a winning strategy. You just take all the best gold color cards. When you do find fixing of any sort, you go for it. Because in lower power cubes too, aggro decks aren't as fast. So if you have some additional time to set up, five color good stuff can be sweet.
Yeah, it certainly can be sweet. I really like that stuff. Like, I'm not one of those cube designers who would poo poo you for trying to set that up. And in fact, even in my sci fi cube, which is like a four color cube, five color decks are actually still an archetype because you have like the Goloses, you have the Chamber Sentry. Like, I do want people to be able to do that. But I also understand why people don't always love that kind of thing. It's definitely not my specialty. Like in Chaos, I don't end up there very often. I really like to play lots of two color decks or two colors like with a splash. I really don't like the risk of not being able to have good mana, but I think I don't know, if I was drafting sets where I knew there was going to be a lot of fixing or like packs were seeded with a land somehow or something like that, then I'd probably be more open to that. I think one of the five color drafts that I did that I'm sure you would appreciate, I think I got past like pack one, pick three Gigantha, the
Ooh,
companion. After that, I think I got this card from Alara block, which has this like activated ability that it costs one mana of each color. It's like, okay, I can tap my Gigantha the card that I always have in my hand to pay for that. Like that, that was a pretty sweet draft.
Oh, that sounds like my kind of draft. That sounds awesome. And I definitely have had experiences before, especially when I had Sam Black. I was really excited to have him do my Legacy Cube at the first CubeCon. And when I built this Legacy Cube, I had all these different synergies in mind, and I did have a little bit of a legendaries deck, and I had, for example, the five color Joda in there, which basically gives you Legends Cascade, but it was more like a sub theme. I feel like players who are really experienced with limited or especially Chaos Draft have a different perspective going into it. They're not trying to abide by what the cube designer put into their cube or what their thought process was of, oh, like we said, blue green is going to be lands, or red white is going to be this. Or I feel like we have a different perspective of, I'm going to just try and the best cards, the most efficient cards. I'm going to try and get as many 2-for-1s in value and slowly take over the game. And that's definitely what Sam Black did in my cube. He went five color legends and just destroyed everybody. That was not my intention, but it really opened my eyes to, sure, as a cube designer, we can put in archetypes, but if players just take the best cards and put them together, sometimes you just win.
Yeah. Well, that's super, super cool. I wonder if you've gotten a chance to chat with Sam Black about that. But yeah, really cool that not only he drafted your cube, but did something so, I don't know, unique like that. I'm no Sam Black, but I also really like just trying to take the best cards. I think maybe even sometimes too much, where I can feel like a little bit maybe synergy like agnostic as a drafter, where I don't know, I'll just go into an environment and be like, this card is good. I like it. I don't like the other cards in the pack. I'm taking this. I'm doing this, and just try to put together some somewhat generic like mid-range game plan. And that is the kind of thing a lot of the time that'll just make me happy. So even if it's not necessarily optimal in a cube, I think if I were to do something closer to optimal, would probably be studying the list, talking with the players, the designer, whatever. Sometimes it's just nice to play Magic that you enjoy. And I love mid-range games. So yeah.
Definitely. So tell me about some of your most memorable Chaos Draft decks that you've ever had. Like I know that you mentioned a couple. One that I had that was really fun was I was doing a Chaos Draft and it had a Streets of New Capenna pack in there, and I opened up the card Meeting of the Five, this really jank bad card that you exile the top 10 cards of your deck. It gives you 10 mana, and you can only use those colors to cast three color cards. And the deck was an insane mess. It was some five color jank pile, but I went 2-1 because I just took as many fixing and gold cards as possible, even if casting Meeting of the Five was not an actually very good card. What have been your favorite Chaos Draft decks that you draft?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've definitely mentioned some that are really close to my heart already. And by the way, the one that you're describing sounds super fun. So it sounds, and just to make sure I'm understanding right, like it sounds like the deck was really powerful and you really enjoyed it, even though like sort of the namesake card or the card that like you based it around was not everything you hoped it to be.
Oh yeah, being able to cast only three color cards was not very powerful. That card is pretty jank.
That makes sense. Yeah. Well, that does sound sweet. I guess actually another deck that I really liked, I think I was four colors in this one. And this is at a time where I like really, really did not want to be playing four colors. This was in paper, and there was like this really nice secret lair that these stores had as like a prize at the time. And you got this like cool Mox Opal if you went undefeated. So, I didn't want to be doing anything goofy or in four colors. Like I wanted to be like drafting this very normal deck, doing things that made sense. And I think I took, I want to say it was like Biting Palm Ninja, something like that, pretty early. So really nice black threat, a rare. Seems like, the kind of thing that would be best card in the pack pretty often. And then after that, I picked up a red removal spell or two. So, now I'm in black and I'm in red. And then all of a sudden, I didn't see any black cards or any red cards. And I'm thinking, like, what am I even supposed to do? I picked up somehow this like blue green looter called Troyan. I was like, I don't know, maybe blue is open. And so maybe I'm like Demir splashing green for this looter. I'm not sure. I just started getting these pieces of fixing, and I wouldn't have had a really cohesive deck without them. And so I was just like, you know what? This is what I've got. I'm going to play all these colors. And thankfully somehow managed to go undefeated with that deck, and it was super fun. just the idea of like being so panicked that like, oh no, I'm not going to be able to cast my spells, to wait, this deck can't lose. Like it's such a big jump from one to the other. So that was really fun.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun. Fighting Mob Ninja is a great card. That card kills people.
Yeah.
3 mana, 3/3 Death Touch. That's what I'm saying. It's just a great stat line.
Yes, absolutely. Or I think it has menace maybe, but yeah.
Oh, yes. And another thing that I love about Chaos Draft is the flexibility that you can do with it. Like at my game store, sometimes we'll throw in really weird packs just to have fun with it. Like we'll put in collector booster packs, we'll put in jumpstart packs. Have you ever done like anything really weird like that?
Yeah, it's tough because on Magic Online, there aren't too many opportunities to have super weird packs, and that's normally where I draft. Some of my favorite weird packs that I've drafted, one of them is Conspiracy. I'd never got to just draft like triple Conspiracy or whatever. And I think the first Paper Chaos draft I did had a Conspiracy pack in it. And there was this card, I want to say it's called like Spire Phantasm or something like that. It's like double blued, two generic for a 3/2 flyer. And it says like draft this card face up, and then when the player you're passing to drafts a card from this pack, you guess which card they drafted. And then if you guess correctly, when you play this thing, it cantrips. So it draws a card when you play it. And so I was like, I don't know, 4 mana, 3/2 flyer is just like an okay rate. Like that's fine. I happened to guess the card correctly that the next player drafted. And it was like, wait, this is sick. Like I have this 4 mana, 3/2 that draws a card when it enters the battlefield and has flying. Like, so yeah, that was something that really kind of turned me on toward liking those weird sets. Conspiracy is definitely up there for me. And I think it might be like the most powerful set to start a chaos draft with as well, because conspiracies are broken.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's another fun thing about Chaos Draft when it comes to Cube is you play these really weird old sets that people just didn't play much, like Conspiracy or even like unsets that I put into Chaos Draft. And you just find sleeper picks that you would have never expected.
Yeah. I feel like that maybe could be like one of the best examples of like discovering the power level of a card from chaos, because I know that cube designers have a lot of respect for conspiracies too, but they're not necessarily super widely like known or played or like run in cubes. If you've encountered them, it's like, well, again, it's a little companion-esque, right? Like just having like an extra effect for free every game is ridiculous. So yeah.
Totally. So, Max, tell me about your goals going forward with content creation and Chaos Draft.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I feel like in general, Magic has provided me like so many opportunities to be ambitious and like so many dreams that I want to fulfill. I feel like just specifically one that feels really appropriate for this show is like growing the game, like for Chaos specifically. Like that is something I would love to do. I'm really happy to see Cube taking off the way that it has been recently. It's so great to see all these conventions, right? Like all these places, opportunities to go in person, travel, like meet these people, compete, have a good time. Like Cube is such an excellent format, and I'm very happy to see it taking off like that. And I would love if, the other formats that I also care so much about, like Chaos Draft, got to be celebrated like that too. And I know it's tough because again, it's so like cost prohibitive. Like it's tough to be drafting chaos necessarily, especially like in a convention style or something like that. That's one of the reasons too that I've come up with these chaos cube sort of designs on Cube Cobra to try to see if there is something that could be more budget friendly or that you could use more than once. But yeah, above anything else, I wish that I could kind of use my love of this way of playing the game and make that contagious and help other people kind of catch that bug and be like, wow, like this is a really cool thing that not everyone knows about or does.
Now we need a convention that's just all Chaos Draft.
That would be awesome. Yeah. People well, my friends have talked about it before. Yeah.
It's such a perfect thing for you to do. You have your Cube and Chaos podcast, make an event called the Cube and Chaos event. You could play
Yeah.
Cube and Chaos Draft. That would be amazing.
It would be, yeah. That's probably a post grad school kind of project for me, but
Yeah, that's
someday.
true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing I want to do with you here is because we were talking about this cube that you designed that was meant to emulate Chaos Draft, is let's actually do a pack one, pick one from this.
Oh gosh. Okay.
So I got a pack one here. So the cards in this pack are Evolution Charm, 1 green instant, search your library for a basic land, put in your hand, or return a creature from your graveyard to your hand, or a creature gains flying. That's such a weird green card.
It's bizarre, yeah.
But as we've talked about, when you're playing Chaos Draft, you take any fixie you can get. So that's definitely in my mind as a potential pick. Then we have Elvish Archers, one and a green for a 2/1 first strike. Hey, it's a first striker in green and it blocks. That's pretty good. As we were talking about with just stats, that's probably fine.
Two color pie breaks, so we're doing well.
Yes, pretty weird, but I like it. Then we have Chartooth Cougar, which is mountain cycling for 2. So you can find a mountain, put it in your hand when you mountain cycle it. And it's also a 6 mana 4/4 with fire breathing in red. So, hey, that's a pretty decent card. Like we talked about, it's fixing and can get you your land so you don't stumble. And it's just a big guy in the late game. Then we have Shackles, 2 and a white to enchant a creature that it doesn't untap. But you can also return it to its owner's hand. Now that's an interesting card. I love these enchantments that can return to your hand if you have like some sort of enchantment payoff or enchantress effect. That's really cool. Then we have Jungle Shrine, which is Naya red, white, green land comes to play tap. We have Brushwag. If it blocks or is blocked, it gets -2/+2. So that is the most just goofy art I've ever seen too. I love this art. It's just
Not
like
to mention creature type too, but yeah.
summon Brushwag. There we go. And it's a 3/2, so if it becomes blocked or is blocked, it becomes a 1/5. So that's a big guy. Then we have Bleeding Image. That's funny. Another card that you can pay 1 and a blue to return into its owner's hand, just like the Shackles. And it's a 2 and a blue for a 2/1 flyer. We have Crumbling Necropolis, blue, black, red land that comes to play tap, just like the Jungle Shrine. Daring Apprentice. Oh, wow. I feel like I have seen this card in queue before. It's a 1 blue blue for a 1/1. Not great stats, but you can tap and sack it to counter a spell. So onboard counter spells. That's some stuff right there. Then we have Dregscape Zombie, 2/1 for 1 and a black with Unearth. So it can come back later. Good for like sack decks or graveyard decks. Pincher Beetles, 2 and a green for a 3/1 with Shroud. Nice and simple, but hey, Shroud is a pretty powerful mechanic. Then we have Sudden Death, 1 black black, split second. So not going to get around this. Target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn. Akundu Cyclops, which is a card that one of my friends, Charlie, is obsessed with. He just puts this everywhere he can. It's 3 and a red for a 3/4, so it's better than a Hill Giant. And if any creature you control attacks, Akundu Cyclops also attacks if possible. So it's an okay card, but the art on this card is also ridiculous. Then we have 2 and a red, an enchantment aura. When it comes into play, it deals 3 to target creature or player and it has first strike. So it's a removal spell that also gives first strike to a creature. And then we have Infiltrator Ilkor, which is 4 and a blue for 3/1 with Shadow. This creature can block or be blocked only by creatures with Shadow, and it has Suspend for 1 and a blue. So you can do it for cheaper, but you have to wait a little bit. Now this feels like a chaos draft right here. What do you think of this fact?
Well, this pack is interesting. I don't feel like there's a bomb in it. So that means, I don't feel like there's a card that I quote unquote have to take. As you were going through, I was pretty interested in the Jungle Shrine. And then there was a Crumbling Necropolis. And it's like, okay, well, I guess I'd probably rather have that one, just given like my color preferences. But then you got to the Sudden Death and the Galvanic Arc. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Now I feel like I have a real choice. Like, do I want, one of these 2 tri-lands? Do I want one of these 2 3-mana removals? I don't know if there's, in my opinion, I don't feel like there's like a wrong choice among those 4 cards. I mean, granted, if you're an Ikundu Cyclops lover, I suppose you could take that. I think for me, I might just take the Galvanic Arc. I think the Sudden Death is like a more powerful card, but the Arc also being splashable feels like a really nice way to start the draft. And the first strike upside, I feel like, is pretty real as well. Should I ask which card you're taking or which tri-land you're taking?
So Kundu Cyclops has the flavor text, big one eye, one big eye, one I see, 2 I die. Traditional Cyclops chant. I think that's important to state. I'm not taking that card at all. It's horrible. But I just felt like it was important to say that. But yeah, I'm in a similar position to you, but I think that the Chartooth Cougar is also a pretty decent pick. I mean, it gets you a mountain. So early game, if you draw it and you want to smooth out your draws. It's like a cantrip in that way. And then it's also a fine creature late game. So that's a potential pick for me also. But I agree. I think Galvanic Arc is pretty powerful, honestly. Sure, it has the blowout potential that you try and enchant your creature and they kill it in response. But giving
But
first
then
strike and being a lightning bolt is pretty good.
the tricky thing about the arc is if you're worried that you're playing it into a removal spell, you can always enchant their creature.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And then you can put it on their creature and then mind
Target.
games them and bolt the creature that you put it on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. They would never expect that. I like that. Well, that
It
was a
happens.
pretty neat pack.
Yeah. I do really like your mention, by the way, of the Chartooth Cougar. Any card like that, any smoothing mechanic where, yeah, it does something early and late. I feel like those cards always overperform and are frequently underrated. But yeah, is there anything definitive that stands out to you?
I think I'm taking the Galvanic Arc. That just
Nice.
seems like a great card. And then hopefully wheel the Chartooth Cougar. What's your final pick? What's your locking in?
Yeah, I think I'm also taking the arc, and it's gets a little bit easier for me because I designed the set. But just thinking like, the times where I would want to take a Triland are times when I feel like there's just not anything super exciting in the pack. And one of the things that for me would be exciting is just removal, especially splashable removal. So yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a big difference between it and the sudden death being the double black.
right.
Awesome. Well, Max, it's been great having you on the show. Anything you want to say before we wrap up here?
I don't think I have too much to add, but yeah, once again, thank you so much, Ian, for having me on the show. And to any listeners out there, thank you guys for sticking with us. Magic is a super fun game. There are tons of great ways to play it. I hope that you guys enjoy them all as much as Ian and I do.
And everyone, definitely go check out the Cuban Chaos podcast. There haven't been as many new episodes recently, but check out their backlog.
I
And then Finite MTG. I mean, you post pretty regularly on YouTube.
do my best. Yeah.
And how often do you stream on Twitch?
Maybe roughly twice a week, something like that. And most frequently it is Chaos Draft. So yeah, if you ever want to hear someone talk about random cards that you've probably never seen before, looking me up on Twitch is a great way to find that.
Yes. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please like, subscribe, follow the podcast. I'd appreciate it. And stay tuned for more episodes coming soon. And have a great day.